Welcome to today's video discussion. Today I'm interviewing Dr. Saleh Mubarak. He is one of the world's leading experts in engineering and construction management. He is a professor at a university, but he's more than just an engineer and an author. He's also a very well respected and well known community organizer and leader in the Tampa Bay community. And he's also part of the Syrian American community. And so, from the very early days of the revolution and all throughout the war, Dr. Saleh did his best to raise awareness, not just politically in advancing the cause of the Syrians who were interested in their freedom, but also raised the funds needed to support Syrian refugees who were relocating in Tampa, Florida, and needed education and different services as they were forcibly relocated due to the war, whether it was here in America or in Turkey and in other places around the world. So I wanted to speak with Dr. Mubarak today about the situation that's currently unfolding in Syria, and I wanted to provide a different perspective. And we've had several discussions about what's taking place in Syria, and he's had a very interesting perspective. So I wanted to interview him today to help us understand what's currently happening in Suwedia and the issue between the Druze, the Israelis, and this new Syrian government. And then I want to zoom out broadly and discuss the implications of the collapse of the former Syrian regime or government, however you want to describe it, with the fall of Bashar al-Assad, and get a sense of which direction Syria may be heading. So, Dr. Mubarak, thank you so much for being here today, and thank you for your time.
My pleasure, my pleasure. And quickly, I want to mention something that since I came to America in February of 1981 until the beginning of the Syrian Revolution, my activism was directed in two issues. One, the Palestinian issue, to the point that many people thought that I am Palestinian, and I consider myself, in a way, spiritually Palestinian. And the other thing is explaining Islam to the general public. So, unlike my brothers and sisters who took it to explain the Syrian situation, who were not active, and not to take anything away from them, I was active in a different arena before that.
So, Dr. Mubarak, we have a situation now unfolding in the South. It's been taking place for a little over a week now, but it's escalated over the last few days. Essentially, there were skirmishes or disputes between local Bedouin tribes in the area around Suweida and then Druze. And there were Druze, obviously, them and their leaders who support the new Syrian government. And then there are some that either seek to completely separate or at the very least govern and secure themselves. And they didn't appreciate the presence of either the Arab tribes or the new Syrian government. And they eventually got the Israelis involved. As we know, Israel bombed the Ministry of Defense in Damascus. They bombed and killed several dozen, if not several hundred, Syrian fighters. And there were reports last night. I don't know how true this is. I usually don't like to repeat such reports unless I see it from media, but I did see a few media publications say that Jolani or Ahmed al-Shara, we're going to use both names interchangeably. It's a bit confusing, I know. But they say that he left Damascus and that he might be either in Idlib or in Turkey now. I don't know if that's true. What are you hearing about what's currently happening in Suweida and with the Syrian president currently?
Okay. I don't have any confirmed reports, but knowing the character of President Ahmed Shara, I will tell you he will not leave Damascus. He will stay there and fight to death. He is a fighter, and we respect that very, very much. Now, you can't isolate the issue in southern Syria, in Suweida, with the Druze, from the incidents that happened since the collapse of the former dictator Bashar al-Assad. And I kind of draw a comparison. It's kind of funny, but it's sad at the same time, to the game that little kids play it here. It's called whack-a-mole. That every time you have a mole coming, you're trying to hit the mole, and then it appears on a different hole. Uh, if you look at the situation, four situations. One, with the separatist Kurds, and I don't say Kurds because most of the Kurds are part of the Syrian fabric. those SDF that all of a sudden, once they want to be part of Syria and once they want to be independent and separate and so on. And then you have the incidents of uh, the Syrian coast with the Alawis. All of a sudden, something happened, and then you had the explosion in the church, which killed many people, mostly worshippers, but also the guards who happen to be Muslims, by the way. And the issue of Muslim Christian, and then it comes the Druze. So it's not coming from the Druze themselves. It's coming from external fingers that are trying to destabilize Syria. And that's not only my opinion. There was an interview on CNN with the former British intelligence, John Stower, I think, who said that Israel is stirring this to keep Syria disintegrated and weak. So if the Druze did not exist, Israel would have invented, something. It's like when Joe Biden years ago said, if Israel did not exist, we would have invented Israel. So it's like Israel is a colonial project. The same thing that Druze are serving. Some of them, those who are loyal to Israel, they're serving a purpose. And if you remember, or you don't remember because you're young, but when Israel occupied southern Lebanon, they created what was called Southern Lebanon Army. They served a purpose for Israel. And then when they expired, they left it. It's like, an, a shoe, you wear the shoe, and then when it wears out, you just toss the shoe away. What the main message to all the Syrian people, regardless of the ethnicity, race, religion, sect, or whatever, we lived together for many, many centuries. We coexisted. This is your home, your land. Don't let any, foreign forces tell you what to do. Don't let any foreign forces interfere between you and the government. Um, yes, there has been some tempers flaring because of killing happened, and we demand an investigation, a neutral investigation, and I completely support what the Lebanese Druze leader Walid Jumblat said. A great guy, by the way. Um, he said, he told the Druze of Syria, you are Syrians, do not seek any help from outside, cooperate with the government, and we call on the government to investigate any killings from any side to any side. That's what we say. Do not trust the Israelis. The Israelis have their own agenda. They want Syria to be disintegrated. In fact, if you look at Israel, they want the so-called Greater Israel, which now they are not bashful about, saying it in public. They're wearing it on their uniform, and Netanyahu showed it in clear picture. But this Greater Israel may not appear that as a contiguous part of the current Israel. It may be a land where Israel has influence, even though not directly. A land like, I would say Egypt or Jordan, where they have, you know, whatever they say. So Syria, when Ahmed al-Shara took over on December 8th of last year, as you remember, Israel immediately executed more than 350 raids that destroyed all the weapon depots of the Syrian, even though they were not comparable, not even close to what the Israelis had, even though they were very primitive and very, yet they destroyed it because they said they don't want these weapons to fall in unsafe hands, which means that they were in safe hands during the Assad regime. We believe the Assad regime was a watchdog for Israel that would bark but no action. And we believe that his father is the one who sold the Golan Heights to Israel and protected Israel. But anyway, now the Assad regime is gone. So Israel does not want Syria to be united, to be stable, to be prosperous. They want Syria to be divided, integrated, and I believe they have uh, definitely hands in what happened with the Kurds, the separate Kurds, SDF to be specific, in the Syrian coast, along the coast with Alawis, and now with the Druze.
So, thank you for this explanation. I want to gently push back a little bit if I can, so I can extract more dialogue and information because I think it's helpful. I already know, many of my audience members are going to be triggered by the fact that you would say that Assad was a watchdog for Israel and that the weapons were in safe hands when they existed for him, but they were removed. There's no doubt about the fact that Bashar al-Assad did not take action offensively to try to recapture territory. At the same time, however, I think you would agree that the resistance forces, even though they're backed by Iran, Hamas, for example, Hezbollah in Syria, and other groups, Syria was a place for them to gather and to plan. And there was even the movement of weapons. So Bashar al Assad himself did not attack, but he did allow Syria to be like a platform, a launch pad, a safe haven for these forces to exist. The other thing is that I don't view the destruction of weapons as they were in safe hands with Assad, but now I think their problem wasn't whose hands it was in. It was just that they existed, that they didn't want the weapons to exist at all. So they can do what we saw the other day. The president wanted to take back Suwedia and regain control over this situation, but the Israelis did not allow him to do so. And one of the reasons why the Israelis did not allow that is because Syria they don't have the capabilities to defend themselves from these airstrikes or to send any kind of Scud missiles back in retaliation. So, what is your response to that? I mean, when you hear those kinds of critiques, what is your reply?
Well, the problem is the way you present it to me is a typical syndrome that many people have, looking at the small details of an area and missing the panoramic view. To talk about resistance, and I talk to people from all sides. Uh, First of all, the main and most important function for any president, any leader of a country, is his own people. And there's no question that Syrian people lived in the utmost misery, uh, and that during this revolution, at least 1 million people were killed, all by the Assad and his allies, and the prisoners in Sednaya. And this is not new. This is not only during the revolution. This is from the beginning of the Assad regime, the father, that any kind of dissent, any kind of, you would disappear from the face of earth. The massacre of Hama in 1982, at least 30 to 40,000 people were executed on the spot. The massacre in Tadmor prison, they were gathered in the prison yard, and they were killed with all kind of weapons. Massacres here and there, in every, we I have many friends and members of the family who suffered or were killed by the regime. So I judge the leader by, first of all, how he treated his own people. And there's no question, we don't disagree, I think you and I, that he gets a solid F. Anyone who gives him a solid other than F is a liar. As far as the Palestinian resistance, he gave them limited access only to benefit him and boost his picture, but he kept them under very tight control. And even if you remember, during the revolution, in the early years of the revolution, when the massacre of At-Tadamun happened in near Damascus, when somebody told this Assad guards that I am, they identified him as Hamas, they were subject to even severer punishment. They killed him in a vicious way. And at the beginning of the revolution, the Assad regime pressured all the Palestinian factions to support him. Now, Hamas took a stand that, no, we're not going to support you against your own people. We, appreciate that, you give us a little space, but we will not. And that's why they were kicked out. Khalid Mash'al, I heard it in a video, said that he was invited to meet with Assad and he refused. And he had to leave the country, he and his family, and all the leadership with their family, which shows that it's not uh, an agreement on the objective, but an agreement on part of the way there. And I believe it's the same thing for Iran. I'm not a fan of the Iranian regime at all, even though I have to tell you that when I remember very vividly when the Shah regime fell and Khomeini took over, I was one of those people who celebrated. But we were disappointed later on when we saw how it was going. And I believe Iran has its own agenda to expand its influence. Now, the Iranian agenda and the Zionist agenda, they compete. Sometimes they have a common interest. Sometimes they don't. I'm not saying they're the same. They are different agendas. But Iran uses several facades, so to speak, or several, you know, uh, um, cover to convince mainly the Arab Sunnis. One of them is the resistance, which is to me totally BS, totally nonsense. And I'll explain that. The other appearance is to love of Ahlul Bayt and so on, and again that's nonsense. But the third one that they won't advertise it is sex and drugs, and they use that. But going back to the uh, resistance,
What do you mean by sex and drugs?
they actually perpetrate sex and drugs wherever they go. They did that in Syria. The sex under the what they call it zawaj mut'a or sigha, they call it in Farsi, which is a temporary marriage. You can marry a woman for a 1 day or 1 hour, all
Mm,
right,
mm,
and you can
I see.
pay certain. So to me, that's prostitution. There's no other question.
And the drugs you're referring to is Captagon.
It's drugs in general. It's not just the Captagon. Hezbollah was the king of drugs in Lebanon, and that's how they financed their operations. They were doing selling, manufacturing drugs and so on. There were many factories that were discovered for the drugs for Hezbollah. So they use drugs and sex. There's no question about it to me. But Iran has its own agenda now. Gaza has been screaming for help since October of 2023. Iran did nothing. Now you may tell me, oh, Egypt did nothing. Actually, I will tell you, Egypt did help the Zionist. So the leadership of Egypt is Zionist. All right, the leadership in Jordan is Zionist. But I'm not judging Iran by the standard of what others do. I'm judging Iran by the rhetoric that they do. They did not help at all. In fact, even when Israel hit Hezbollah in Lebanon, I did not see the reaction of Iran. I thought, come on, this is your guy. Go and help him. I'd be happy to see anyone, fight against Israel. But that didn't happen. And when this so-called war, 12 days between Iran and Israel happened, yes, Iran did hit some missiles that they did cause some damage, but they then stopped. They stopped, which shows that their objective is not to destroy Israel as they claim. It's only to sell an image that, oh, we did something. We actually fired, it's like I don't remember, a few months ago or a year ago when they also fired some drones that most of them dropped. They did not reach their target. So its objective is not to cause harm to Israel as much as to sell an image that, oh, we are doing something.
Obviously they have to act in ways that save face, that protect their image, both domestically and internationally. Of course, there's no doubt about that. I think at the same time, though, we can recognize, and you have acknowledged this, they delivered some significant damage to the state of Israel, and I would argue that The reason why they didn't keep going is not because they're not interested in defeating Israel. I think it's clear that Israel views them as an enemy, and it's vice versa. Iran knows who their enemy is and who's trying to destroy them. But I think it was a sign of vulnerability that they couldn't continue because they had some issues they needed to shore up. But there's a lot to unpack. But I appreciate you sharing your perspective. So we're talking now about Zionists. So you talked about the collaboration of the Egyptian government, the Jordanian government. A lot of people, myself included, are concerned about which direction Syria will go. And I've already shared this with you privately that there were many instances in which we saw a little too close for comfort a growing relationship, whether direct or indirect, between the state of Israel or uh, their lobby in the United States and the Syrian American community, whether that was meeting with Joe Wilson and celebrating him, or having congressmen like Corey Mills, Zionist business billionaires like Jonathan Bass, who wants to invest in Syria's energy industry. He's been having private meetings with Ahmed al-Shara''s team. There was a report that just last week, Syrians met with Israeli officials in Azerbaijan, and they held direct meetings for one of the first few times, giving back Eli Cohen's belongings, one of the biggest traitors in Syrian history, things of that nature. So I don't think the Syrians are Zionists, of course not. But I do see what we see all across the region, where people look at the Palestinians as a lost cause and they see the Israelis as a useful asset, and they are the gatekeepers to America, and the Syrians needed to get these sanctions lifted.
Yeah.
So is there a concern on your end about the direction that the Syrian government may feel the need to go in
I,
order
I,
to advance
I
their
see your
interests?
point, Ahmed. I see your point very clearly. And I believe Ahmed Shara, the President Ahmed Shara, is a smart person, smart politicians. Look, there are people from two extreme point of view, and one extreme says, "Oh no, don't even talk to them, don't do any compromise. We're willing to go fight and so on." This is not practical. Syria is not at the level zero, at the level like 100 degrees below the zero. It's destroyed in every way. And I'm telling you this from firsthand knowledge. Most of my family lived there, and many of my family here, my brother and my sister, just came back from there. I know that it's in terrible, terrible condition. No electricity, no basic services. So you're not in a position to fight a war. You don't have even weapons. You don't have anything. The other extreme is pushing them to fully normalize a relationship with the Israelis and be part of the Abrahamic Accord, which is nonsense, and so on. So I believe, and I don't know, I don't have any information from the inside, but I believe that the Ahmed Shara is trying to go as much as possible without compromising the principles to protect Syria. He's trying that when they met in Azerbaijan, as you mentioned, with the guardianship or mediation of the Turks, whom I trust. So it's not like direct. It's not at the level of the president, but some low level. You know, I don't know if medium or low level politicians who were trying to uh, kind of see how how can we protect our country, Syria. They did this through several mediators, but the fact that Shara cannot have a full normalization with Israel. Number one, because the Syrian people will not accept that at all. Number two, because even though he is the president, but he is not an elected president, there is no parliament that can vote on this. And such a drastic thing that, as like, signing a peace agreement requires the approval of the people. Number three, we have part of Syria, significant part of Syria, still occupied by the Israelis. You cannot have peace and still that. Not to mention the fourth reason that what our brothers and sisters in Palestine are suffering. But there was an agreement between the Syrian government and Israel in 1974 between President Hafez al-Assad at that time. It's called in Arabic fakul irtibat, like stop the hostilities, but there's no like normalization or that. So my information is that the Ahmed Shara's government suggested going back to that agreement, like, okay, no hostilities, we will not allow any hostilities at this time, but we're not going to normalize and have an Israeli embassy and Israeli flag there. That's impossible. That's not going to happen.
Building upon that, what do you think? This is how I've been interpreting the negotiations. So, firstly, I'll admit I believed that what the Syrians were trying to accomplish was naive, and I was proven wrong. I thought that there's no way they can get the sanctions lifted, that the United States would never allow them to establish a fully secure, economically prosperous Syrian state. So I thought there's no way they'll get the sanctions lifted. But then they did get it lifted, and they got it lifted rather quickly. I mean, within 6 months. But now we're still seeing Israel not allow Syria to establish itself with a strong central authority. Like in Suwedia, we know the Israelis have a long, deep relationship with the Kurds. They love supporting either Kurdish autonomy or Kurdish independence completely as a way to form an anti-Turkic, anti-Arab alliance in order to destabilize the region, just balkanize it, divide it, and conquer it. While I was proven wrong about the ability to get the sanctions lifted, I still feel as though what the Syrian government expects through giving these concessions to the Israelis is kind of idealistic and a bit naive. And I don't say that to be disrespectful. I just mean, how can you expect the Israelis to allow Syria to become the economic, prosperous, and eventually potentially militarily capable state of defending itself in 10, 20, 30 years? Obviously, that's not in Israel's interest, and we know how vicious they are in pursuing their interests. They don't believe in collaboration, they believe in domination.
In the science of emotional intelligence, you're supposed to focus on the best possible outcome, not the ideal outcome. So you may have two, three possible or viable outcomes. They're all bad. You don't have a choice of a good, outcome, but you want to choose the least worst of them, the least evil of them. All right. It's like the U.S. voters when it comes to election of the president. We don't have a good candidate that is viable. We have what's the name of the African American professor,
Dr. West, Cornel West.
Cornel West or Jill Stein, but they're not going to win. So in this case, I believe the Syrian government knows that its options are very limited. And they are trying to go in a way that will have higher likelihood of protecting the country using allies. And I know that you have reservation, and I do have reservation on Mohammed bin Salman MBS, but that's okay. In this case, I believe he played a very positive role in convincing President Trump to lift sanctions. So I'm not gonna say I'm in love with him, but I appreciate what he did. Uh, and also the the work of the Syrian community here. I participated in good part of it. Now you mentioned that they cooperated or collaborated with some Zionist members of the Congress. Those who are not Zionist are handful. By the way, today there was a resolution to cut the funding to Israel, and it was defeated by only six voted for, only six, and 422 against. I mean, to tell you how Zionist our Congress is. So you learn in politics to isolate the issues. Okay, so when you are talking about the Syrian issue, you may collaborate with somebody who is a Zionist, but you're not collaborating with him against Palestine. No, you are cooperating with him in a specific issue, and I'm not one of these anyway. And I know that some Syrian Americans took it a little bit too far, but I think out of ignorance. I know when they carried Joe Wilson and so on, but out of They don't know how, many of them I
So
spoke
it
to them.
sounds like from your perspective, you don't think it's idealistic. You think it's like hyper realistic that, you have limited options. You have to do what you have to do. And
Yes, yes.
collaborating on a single item doesn't necessarily endorse the entire vision or anything like that.
Right,
And
right.
I see the logic and the wisdom behind that, no
Let
doubt.
me give you, Ahmed, let me give you a very quick example. You are working as a cashier at a 7-Eleven. At midnight, somebody comes and puts a gun on your head. Give me the money or else. Now, you don't have the option that, oh, I can call the police, I can resist him, I can, this. Your options are two and only two: lose the money or lose the money and your life. All right. So you have to choose the best viable, consequence or outcome.
Yeah. So focusing on this example you used, it's an interesting one with the 7-Eleven. Uh, okay. Now, if the story started there, as a cashier, give me the money or your life, then yeah, obviously give them the money. But let's say the 7-Eleven is a safe and secure place, has the ability to defend itself, and then they come in and they say to the cashier, help me get rid of your boss and the security guard, and I'll help you do that. And then after doing that, telling them, give me the money or give me your life, then, the cashier might have some reflection, like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have done that. Do you understand the point I'm trying to make?
Yes, yes, but it's maybe in the example of the 7-Eleven, you have to make an instant decision right now, because if you don't, you lose your life.
Yeah,
In
I
our
see.
situation,
I
you
see.
may have a little bit of more time to explore the options, to explore the outcomes, and so on, and then act on that. I have a feeling. It's a feeling. There's no basis for it, that there is very strong coordination between the Syrian government and the Turkish government. And sometimes you wonder. I used to be a big fan of President Erdogan, and I still have that, but I'm kind of frustrated. First of all, that I feel he didn't do enough for Gaza, and now he's not doing enough for Syria. But I'm also wondering, is he under threat from, some, very powerful side, that you don't do this or don't do that, and he doesn't want Turkey to be involved in a war that will stop its economic or scientific and technological progress. I don't know, but sometimes the politicians um, know things that they cannot tell the public, that I did this
Yeah,
because of that, I didn't do this because of that. And no, now we are sitting here and we are guessing, oh, why didn't you do this and that and so on. It's like what you're watching a soccer match between Liverpool and
yeah,
Manchester City, and you say, why did the coach did this? Why did the referees? Sometimes we don't see the all the details.
yeah. I
Um,
see what you're saying. I mean, in Erdogan's case, he's not just not doing enough for Gaza, but through Azerbaijan, he's literally fueling and profiting off of the oil that is sent to the state of Israel, which obviously fuels their economy and their genocidal machine. So he's more than just not doing enough; he's complicit. But it's a lot more complicated than that. I'm not, going to say that Erdogan is a sellout. I think, to your point, when you zoom out on the grand scale of things, if you're the leader of a country, while you have allegiances to, let's say, the Palestinian cause or just humanity in general, at the same time, you do have to secure the interests of your people. I don't think the Turks are like Zionists that like Israel. I don't even think Mohammed bin Salman likes Israel. I think they just recognize that at this moment in time, they're the most wealthiest and powerful and most technologically advanced foe, supported by an even bigger beast, which is the United States empire, the most powerful empire in the history of humanity. So, from what I understand about Turkey, it seems like, their presence in NATO allows them to kind of maneuver in a way that expands their influence and their power without being at direct odds with the United States. And so they're taking advantage of this opportunity, especially in Central Asia, using the cover of NATO to advance and build themselves until the day that NATO and potentially the US declines in strength and relevance. And then Turkey's able to come out and be fully independent in terms of foreign policy. I'm not trying to provide cover for Erdogan, but that's just the way I see it. And I guess the same way, to your point, for the Syrians, it sounds like they have limited options and they're just trying to do what they feel is best for themselves. Um, but let me ask you this: do you feel now, after what you've witnessed in Suweida, because to me the story, it's not surprising that Druze are fighting local Arab. I mean, Iraq was the same way after the U.S. invaded. When you have war, you have grievances. People feel like they need to defend themselves. There's no strong central government. There's no control. So you have disputes. And from what I heard, actually, the dispute between the Druze and the local Arab militias blew up over something very tiny, and it exacerbated to this situation. The bigger story to me is that the IDF bombed the Syrian government forces, and prevented them from continuing on to Suweida. So, given Israel's actions, is it now clear to you, or do you feel that Israel will not allow Syria to remain, to keep its territorial integrity? That their intention is to keep Syria divided and broken moving forward?
Absolutely, and I said that before even this, and I believe that the negotiation or talks in Azerbaijan and other places, there was tremendous pressure on Ahmed al-Shara and his government to go fully with what Israel wants, and when he refused, that was the answer.
I see. So, moving forward, I mean, what can the Syrian government do?
Ahmed Shara made a talk yesterday morning, and it was very balanced. It's we don't want the war, but if the war is if we have to fight the war, we are willing to fight the war. And I think here's the thing. Let me conclude with this. Uh, there was minority of Syrians, tiny minority that said, "Oh, well, let's sign a peace treaty with Israel and so on. Let's get with it." I think now this minority is gone. There's no one, no, when I say no one, I mean like 90 something percent of the Syrians are look at Israel as an enemy, as the that killed our people, our brothers in Palestine, that occupied this. So there's no way it's going to um, you know uh, concede to the pressure and say, okay, whatever Israel wants. And Israel is their demands are progressive. They will take this from you, and then a year later will demand something more. They will not stop at this. And if the Israeli flag, and I tell people I respect the Star of David as a religious symbol, but I do not respect the Israeli flag because it's a political symbol, and those two blue lines, they will tell you they represent the Nile River and the Euphrates River. That's their dream, is to go all the way from the Nile in Egypt to the Euphrates River in Iraq and Syria, and they don't make it a secret. It's now they're not bashful about it, and I believe. It may get worse before it gets better, but inshallah, I'm very optimistic. I'm seeing the good sign that American people are waking up. And I told you that the Congress is still very Zionist, but now, hopefully, in the next elections and the next elections every 2 years, we will see some shifts. We see the shift in the New York mayoral elections. I'm impressed by having right wing people who we used to look at them as adversaries, but now they are talking very. It's like Tucker Carlson, like MTG, Marjorie Taylor Greene, like Matt Gaetz. Those people, they're not Muslims, they're not Arabs, they're not Palestinians, but they are. All of what they're saying is put America first. All the politicians now, most of the politicians, Israel first, and they put Israel's interest above America's interest. So I see a shift at the people's level that hopefully will reflect at when the elections happen at the political level. And Israel is continuing its aggression and crimes because there is an American cover, American cover as far as finance, weapons, diplomatic, everything. And we're hoping that this will change soon, maybe in couple of years, inshallah.
I just want to ask one final question, if I can. You described at the start of this conversation how you view Iran's foreign policy, that their agenda uses the resistance to kind of sanitize their imperial agenda, which is to expand
Right.
their influence in the region, et cetera, et cetera. The Syrians have told Israelis, who are, you know, obviously they have a long history of oppression against the Syrian people and, of course, the Palestinian people. The Syrian government have told the Israelis that, we have a common enemy. Is there the potential now, after what Israel has done, that maybe the Syrians look at Iran and they say, look, we have a common enemy, that we have this long history of animosity towards one another, but we have a common enemy, and perhaps we can come to some kind of arrangement that serves both of our interests? Is there the potential for that kind of, I don't want to say unity, because that, this is the actual idealistic word, but some kind of realignment of interests, where there's no longer regional partners in the region that are undermining one another just to feel more secure, but are actually serving each other's interests and agendas, and confronting Israel?
No, I believe that the best that can happen is later on some kind of normalization of the relationship between Iran and Syria, if Iran acknowledges its crimes in Syria, and if Iran agrees to compensate the Syrians for what they did. They and through the militias that they brought, such as Hezbollah, Fatimiyun, Zainabiyun, and all kind of militias from Iraq, Lebanon, and so on, sectarian militias. So Iran committed a lot of crimes, and they need to acknowledge that. Besides, we don't have a common goal. The goal of the Syrian ultimately is not the goal of the Iran. Iran wants to expand its influence. Now, we uh, don't have a grudge against the Iranian people themselves, because we look at them as victims of their own regime. So we are hoping for not the comeback of the son of the Shah, that he's a scumbag, but to have a democratic rule of Iran, sort of like the Muhammad Mossadegh in 1953. He was a great guy, great leader of Iran, that he was overthrown by the British and American. Uh, I don't know if you know the story, but Iran had an elected prime minister who was a technocrat. He was very patriotic. He was a great guy. So we hope that Iran will have somebody like Mohammad Mossadegh. At that time, things may change, because Iran is a big country. It has a history, and it's there. Uh, it's not going anywhere. So we better have good relationship with our neighbors, all the neighbors. I hope that you know one day all the wars and those altercations would stop, but they are all motivated by greed and racism and personal agenda of certain regimes and organizations.
Dr. Mubarak, thank you so much for your time. I hope that we can have you on more often to help us understand the Syrian perspective a little more. At Propaganda and Co, we have an ideological vacuum. We don't subscribe to any specific ideology. We're just interested in all the different propagandists and analysts and journalists, and gaining a deeper understanding. And so I've been, particularly critical of this new Syrian government, and so I wanted to, bring on someone who could provide a different perspective to help me gain a deeper understanding, but also my audience as well. And I'm attacked for doing so. People think that they say, Ahmed, you're a Jolani and an Al Qaeda supporter. And on the flip side, I have people tell me that I'm a secret Rafidi Shia, So I'm neither. I'm just a guy trying to understand what the hell is going on. So
All right, all right,
thank you
all
for
right.
being here.
Thank you. All right.
Trust nothing. No